So there I was, sitting in the back of my beat-up old hatchback, windows completely clear. No tints, no privacy whatsoever. Honestly, I never cared about all that fancy window stuff. I just wanted to roll the windows down and hear the world. You know? Anyway, that day I had pulled into the college parking garage, that concrete rabbit warren where everyone somehow thinks they own the place. It was midday, and the garage was half full, the usual mix of cars squeezed in haphazardly between those faded yellow lines. I swung the back door open and climbed in, taking a moment to carve out my little corner of peace amid the clatter of distant footsteps, engines humming, and distant conversations echoing off the walls. There's something oddly comforting about being half inside your car and half out in the open. It's like you get the best of both worlds. The cool, stale air of the garage mingled with the familiar musky scent of the old upholstery. Now, I had to handle one of those awkward moments, the ones that sneak up on you when you least expect it. It had been a long morning, and I was feeling that telltale tickle of sweat creeping in. So, naturally, I grabbed my deodorant from the side pocket and started applying it right there in the back. No shame, no worry. I was exposed, yeah, but I didn't really care. The large windows gave anyone walking by a crystal-clear view of me, casually freshening up like it was the most normal thing in the world. I remember thinking, of all places, who's going to actually notice? The garage was busy enough that people were probably just rushing to their cars, necks down, headphones in, trying not to make eye contact with strangers. Plus, it's not like anyone expected a full-on personal grooming session in a dimly lit parking garage, right? I was comfortable, relaxed, zoning out a bit while I rubbed on the deodorant. The dull gray ceiling above me, dotted with flickering fluorescent lights, was oddly hypnotic. It's funny because, in a way, I felt kind of like I was in a fishbowl. Not in the typical sense of being trapped, but more like just totally on display. Every move I made was visible. No sneaky smoke breaks here, no discreet texting. Not that I was doing anything scandalous. Just me minding my own business, exposed and vulnerable to whoever happened to pass by. And then just as I was wiping my hands on my pants, ready to shut the door and head to class, I noticed a car pulling into the spot right next to mine. What caught my attention wasn't the fact that a new car showed up. It was how these folks decided to park. I mean, seriously, they squeezed in so close that I was pretty sure they could have reached out and high-fived me from their driver's seat without turning their head. The driver was a girl, and from what I could tell, she was the kind of person who definitely wanted to make an impression, or maybe she just didn't care about rules. Either way, her parking job was suspicious as hell. The car was so near to mine that holding the door open on my side without hitting her car seemed impossible. At that moment, the calm, almost zen-like atmosphere I had set for myself shattered. Suddenly, this tiny corner of the world felt less private, less safe. I remember thinking, this isn't going to end well. No way. That's when things started to shift from just a chill parking garage afternoon to a full-blown petty showdown. The kind where you don't say much but your car says everything, one dent at a time. And that's when she stepped out. Alright, so here's how it all went down. I just pulled into this cramped little corner spot on the second level of the parking garage. You know the type, tight spaces squeezed between columns, barely enough room to open your door fully without risking a scrape. I was already thinking, great, this is going to be a tight turnaround, but I figured I'd managed okay. I parked, shut off the engine and stepped out, feeling a little smug about my parallel parking skills that day. Then out of nowhere, this girl pulls into the spot next to mine. And when I say pulls in, I mean she just kind of tossed her car between the lines, nose almost bumping the concrete barrier in front, door practically brushing mine. I remember watching her from my spot. She didn't even take a second to adjust before wrenching her door open, like she was mad at the whole world or something. I've seen plenty of careless parkers, but her door slamming technique was something else. She opened it so hard that her backpack, which was hanging off the door handle, swung violently and smashed right into the side mirror of my car. And not a gentle tap, it left a clear, noticeable dent. Honestly, at first I thought maybe she just scraped me a bit, but as I edged closer my stomach sunk. The paint was scratched, the dent was there, and you could tell it wasn't from some careless bump. It was almost like she'd done it on purpose without a second thought. What really got me though? The way she stood there, totally indifferent. She barely glanced in my direction, didn't even flinch or look apologetic, just slammed her door shut with this annoyed sigh and marched off toward the elevator like it was no big deal. Like my car was just another annoying obstacle in her path. And her backpack? It looked like it had been squished between the door and my mirror with zero concern for the damage it was wreaking. At that moment I remember thinking, seriously? You can't even be bothered to be careful? Or to say sorry? I mean, this wasn't some random stranger on the street. It was a parking garage. A space where people are supposed to share respect for each other's property. Right? But apparently, she wasn't interested in sharing anything except damage. I was honestly stuck there for a minute, just staring at the mess on my car. My frustration grew, but so did this weird, simmering disbelief. How do people just act like this, like they're entitled to disrespect someone else's stuff without even a glance or a word of apology? I was fuming, but at the same time there was this voice in my head saying, don't let her get away with this. So yeah, as she headed off without a backward glance, I found myself already plotting a little payback. Not because I'm a troublemaker, but because some things just don't deserve to slide. That dent on my car wasn't going to be the end of this story. And that's when I decided once she left, I was going to make sure she felt what it was like to have someone else slam their door on their ride. Honestly, right after she walked away, I just stood there, staring at that stupid little dent she left on my door. It wasn't even big, just this tiny, barely noticeable ding. But to me it felt like a perfect symbol of everything that day. Careless, thoughtless, and downright annoying. I couldn't just let it slide, even though part of me knew reacting would probably make me look a bit ridiculous. But hey, sometimes you've got to let off steam. So without really thinking it through, I walked back to my car, got behind the wheel and opened my door. Then, with a sort of mix between frustration and mischief, I slammed my door straight into the side of her car. Not just once, but again and again. I mean, not full-on rage style, more like firm but playful, if that even makes sense. Each slam was this little punch of satisfaction, like quietly telling her, hey, your carelessness isn't going to go unnoticed. At first, I actually felt a little guilty, as if I was stooping to the same level. But then as I kept hearing that thunk against her metal, this weird grin spread across my face. It was petty. It was childish. But goddamn, it felt so good. That repetitive sound, the slight shake of my own door in my hand, even the way her car's side panel started to show a bit of a dent. Those moments made me forget all the stress and just focus on this dumb, ridiculous act of revenge. I remember thinking, this is probably the dumbest fight ever. But at the same time it was kind of perfect. Here we are, two strangers not even exchanging a word, locked in this silent battle of dents and door slams. It was like some weird unspoken communication, telling her I wasn't going to be pushed around or have my car treated like a public park and hit zone. What surprised me the most was how small and petty it felt, but how satisfying too. Like I'd just gotten away with this tiny rebellion, and somehow that made my day better. I'm not proud of it, honestly. It's one of those moments you look back on and laugh because you know it's not your finest behavior. But at that second it was like a perfect outlet for all the frustration that had been building up. After a few good slams, I leaned back against my car and sighed, watching her walk away in the distance with no idea what was happening just feet from her. And that's when it hit me. Confrontation wasn't going to happen, not now. She was already gone. The physical act of retaliation was done, and the moment to say anything face to face had passed. I stood there for a moment, door still open, heart still pounding a bit from the adrenaline. There was this strange calm that settled over me, mixed with a little smugness but also a bit of emptiness, like what now? The petty satisfaction was there, but also the sense that this fight was so insignificant in the grand scheme of things. Yet it kind of mattered, at least to me. So instead of chasing after her or shouting anything out, I just closed my door slowly, the final thunk sounding like a punctuation mark on this weird little episode. And right then I started thinking about what would happen next, if this silly dent duel was actually over, or if it was just getting started. Looking back on that whole dent duel fiasco, I couldn't help but feel a little sheepish about how seriously I took it in the moment. I mean, here I was caught up in this tiny war over scratches and dents that, honestly, didn't really matter in the grand scheme of things. After the last round of reparations, I decided enough was enough. I parked my car 2 levels down, far away from the battlefield, and told myself I wasn't going to let this petty cycle get the better of me. It was a quiet sort of surrender, but also kind of freeing. Standing there, looking at both of our cars, my old barely holding it together sedan and their equally battered little hatchback, it hit me how ridiculous this whole thing was. These weren't shiny new rides. They were those trusty hand-me-downs that had been passed around like college dorm furniture. Sure, the dents told stories, but none of them were catastrophic. My car had a few dings and scrapes before the feud started, and theirs looked like it had survived a dozen campus parking adventures already. When I thought about it like that, the whole argy-bargy felt more like siblings bickering over who claimed the last slice of pizza than a serious vendetta. We were just two students trying to navigate the chaos of college life, balancing classes, exams, part-time jobs, all while wrestling with the minor annoyances that came with having a car in a packed garage. The dents became almost like badges of honor, proof that we'd survived the daily commute battlefields and the madness of campus parking. I remember chuckling to myself as I locked my door. This little prank war, the back-and-forth slaps of paint, had been a distraction, sure, but maybe a necessary one. It reminded me that sometimes, you just have to laugh at the absurdities life throws at you. The marks on the cars weren't signs of failure or aggression. They were just part of the backdrop of college life. A series of small inconveniences and unexpected twists that everyone goes through. So rather than stewing over the dents or plotting my next move, I decided to embrace the chaos. I'd let the past scratches stay as they were, little reminders not to take myself too seriously. And honestly, knowing that the next time I or anyone else squeezed into that crowded garage, these scratches would probably just multiply in hilarious, unpredictable ways made me feel a bit better. At the end of the day, it's these tiny stories, these small moments of drama over something as silly as parking dents, that make college life memorable. We could get worked up, let frustrations consume us, or we could shrug it off and share a laugh with anyone who'd had their own parking lot battles. And really, isn't that what keeps us sane amid all the stress? So yeah, my dent duel chapter closed not with a bang but a grin. Because sometimes the best revenge is just letting go and having a little fun with life's little petty annoyances. If you've ever had a frustrating run-in with a parking spot or found yourself caught in a silly, escalating feud over something that seems trivial later on, you're definitely not alone. And that's exactly the kind of stuff that makes these everyday stories worth sharing and laughing